Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to DBA Fundamentals Down Under for the month of September. Once again, I'm your host for the month. And this month, we've got Jen McCown talking to us about T-SQL's hidden support features. And I will hand over to Jen very shortly to take us through this session. But before we do just have some housekeeping that I will run through. For those of you who haven't been to SentryOne's website before, make sure you go and visit SentryOne, as they are our sponsor for this monthly session. And they do have some fantastic materials available for your use and for your learning purposes around SQL Server. So make sure you visit them and have a look at all of the related materials. Now, just a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be available on the DBA Fundamentals archive website. That will probably be available in about 4 to 5 days' time, but feel free to come back and rewatch today's session. During the session, feel free to reach out with any questions. I will be monitoring those and hand those over to Jen at the appropriate time to answer those. So with that, we'll hand over to Jen now to take us through today's session.
Excellent, thank you. I guess I should click show my screen now, shouldn't I?
There we go, we can see your slide deck.
All right, lovely. So, hi guys. I am, as he said, I'm Jen. Good to see you. I'm imagining I'm to see you. So yeah, today we're doing T-SQL's hidden support feature. And I actually like to start this by saying how this actually came about. I developed this session last year quite literally on a dare. I was talking to a user group in Oklahoma City, and in the middle of a diatribe about comments, I interrupted myself and I said, you know what, I need to stop, because if I don't stop, I will just keep going and going. This is a big, subject of mine. It's a big hobby horse of mine. As a matter of fact, I could do an entire session on this. Somebody dare me. And the organizer of the SQL Saturday was standing in the back of the room. He said, I dare you. I said, I'll do it. He said, well, I'll put it on the schedule. So I did, and he did. And it's turned out to be actually one of my very favorite sessions. So let me minimize this and get it out of my way. And let's talk a little bit about, well, me, I guess, for starters. No, that's not me. This is me. I'm up there in the right-hand corner. Hi. So my husband Sean and I are the Midnight DBAs. You can see over on the left-hand side. We have for many, many years, something like a decade or more now, I think, made free training videos and put them up online on all manner of IT subjects. We've got SQL, of course. We've got PowerShell. We've got SIS. We've got, again, more or less whatever we feel like. And that site is, again, completely free, no login, ad-free, all that jazz. We've also branched out to a consulting arm, Midnight SQL, and more recently software. We are Minionware, and you'll hear all about us online. We make free backup and maintenance tools, and also a management automation and auditing tool called Minion Enterprise. But I'm not talking about that today. I am here to talk about, well, it's not exactly the secrets of the universe, but I'm going to make the case for comments, and then we're going to, I'm not going to read you the slide, we're going to do a few fun things today. All right, so the case for comments. In the abstract, if you did read the abstract, I said, and I quote, the most effective T-SQL support feature comes installed with every edition of SQL Server, it's enabled by default, and it costs no overhead. And I did reveal in the abstract that it's comments. This is a session about comments. Why am I calling comments a hidden support feature? Comments themselves aren't hidden. Anybody who works with T-SQL, anybody who works with pretty much any programming language is aware of comments, has used comments. But it's the idea of using comments as a support feature that's stuck back somewhere behind the curtains. So comments are a form of documentation. If you ask me, it's one of the best forms of documentation, especially if you do it right. Documentation makes code more supportable by making the code more understandable. Maybe it's you that's going to benefit from that, which is fantastic, right? Maybe it's the rest of the team that benefits from you placing your wisdom in comments, or maybe it's whoever the next team or the next guy is that has to come in and support the code. which is also actually quite great because that means that you are no longer on the hook to answer every single question they come up with. They can look at the code, they can look at the comments and say, oh, well, look there. The answer is right in front of me. So that's wonderful. So the short answer to why are comments a hidden support feature is comments let you understand code quickly. It's targeted documentation. So traditional documentation. If we were all standing in a room together, first off, I would be absolutely delighted because I've never been to Australia before, and I'd love to. But if we were all standing in a room together or sitting, I would say at this point, nobody likes to create documentation. And one or two people would frown at me because there are a couple of exceptions. I would say, why is it that people don't like to make documentation? Now, since we're not in the same room, allow me to take some liberties and answer for you. Someone in the back over there said making documentation is a giant pain. We hate doing it. It takes time away from the important things. Absolutely. I've got your back on that. We're not technologists because we love writing about solutions we've made. We're technologists because we like solving problems with technology, preferably, you know, the newest, fanciest, shiniest technology that our companies will give us access to. Someone else over on the left side of our virtual room is waving their hand wildly around and saying it gets out of date very quickly. Yes, you're right, person over there on the left side of the room. Documentation does get out of date very quickly. Code changes and it moves fast, and almost the moment you write it down, your documentation is out of date. Ask me how I know. I know from experience. Someone else says nobody reads it. This is actually also very true. I go through all the bother of creating this lovely documentation for everyone, and people just ignore it outright because, again, we're technologists and we like solving problems, not reading documentation. We don't need. I don't always get this answer, but I have gotten enough times to include it here. We don't need documentation. The code is self-describing. That's not the way it's put. How is it put? It's self-explanatory. That's the term I'm looking for. Code is not self-explanatory, in my opinion. You can ferret it out after a time, most of the time, but no, it's called code for a reason. We'll just do documentation when the project is done. At this point, by the way, I would ask for a show of hands. How many people have actually gotten to the end of a project and then gone back and done a proper set of documentation? And perhaps one or two of you in a very large room might raise your hand, and at least one of those people would have done it because management forced them to, which is a valid reason, but it's really not that fun. But I'll document myself out of a job. I have absolutely no idea how common this answer is outside of the States, but here, again, I've gotten it frequently enough. I feel very happy to include it. No, you will not document yourself out of a job. The way it works is either you are competent enough and appreciated enough and fortunate enough to keep your job whether or not you document, or the company is looking to get rid of you anyway, and it doesn't really matter if you're doing documentation or not. No company, on the sudden discovery that you have produced a large volume of wonderful documentation, will suddenly say, oh, excellent, well, we can let them go then. That's not the way it goes. So comments are better than traditional documentations in several ways. First off, folks will actually write comments once you point out that it's a really good idea and not that difficult. I'm already in the code. I'm already writing down the solution. I can get in the habit of taking a moment to say, oh, and by the way, this is why we've done it this way and not the more obvious, you know, or preferred way, and so forth and so on. Comments are exceptionally hard to lose because, again, they're actually in the code. In our case, we're SQL developers, and so comments are in our stored procedures, in indeed our views, in our functions, in our triggers, if you're forced to do triggers. Very, very hard to lose, and very easy to read. You're almost forcing people to read them. That thing about documentation, no one ever reads it. Well, here, if anyone's looking at the code, say to refactor it, to make it faster, to upgrade it for the new application, the comments are right there. And it's very natural to update for the same reason. If you go in to do any refactoring, any make it fastering, then you notice there's a comment right alongside it that is now obsolete. Oh, well, as long as I'm updating this query, I'd better update this comment. That's no longer relevant. This is done now for this reason. Comments are your exobrain. I've been using the term exobrain for several years. And it was only when I developed this session that I decided to actually search it up online and found, to my delight, that it was on urbandictionary.com. By the way, well, I guess this is, again, more of a warning for American audiences who are in companies who are a little more conservative. So I hear that Urban Dictionary is not always safe for work. But this article, this particular entry, is your exobrain is your extended brain power from the information you have to access to from your computer or from the web. Comments are a data dump immediately from your brain into the code, which is absolutely marvelous. So a quick story to go along with this, actually a quick sip of tea and then the story. There we are. A quick story to go along with this. I've been going to SQL Server events, SQL Saturdays, Tech Ed, back when it was Tech Ed, and past summits and so forth, for many years. And I've found that I was absolutely awful with remembering people's names. I would meet someone again and know for a fact that I'd spoken to them before and have to just nod and smile and do the standard, hey, it's good to see you, guy, and because I couldn't remember their names. And I was very hard on myself about this. Why do I have such a terrible memory? What can I do to improve my memory? It got so bad, as a matter of fact, that I met someone and spoke to them, and I went ahead and broke down and did the thing you should never do, and I said, I'm so very sorry. I have forgotten your name. Could you please remind me? And he looked at me in a stunned way, and he said, really? I said, oh, good Lord, did we date or something? It is what I thought. I did not say that out loud, thank heavens. I said, yes, really? He says, really? I'm like, oh, did we date recently? That doesn't seem likely. I've been married a long time. He said, really? We went to, event name just a few months ago. Oh, gosh. And we sat next to each other at the bloggers table. Oh, gosh. I won the hat you were giving away. Okay. So that guy's name I remember. But the point of all of this is that it's not that I have a terrible memory, it's that there's so much to remember. I meet literally hundreds of people at these events. There is no way I can reasonably expect to remember all of their names and associate them with the right faces. I have to meet you at least 3 or 4 events in person and have significant conversations with you before I even have a chance at remembering your name. And in the same way, we as technologists touch how many hundreds of pieces of information in the course of a month directly related to our jobs, how many pieces of code, how many queries. It's not reasonable to expect that you will remember the nuances of every piece of code you've ever written. We're on large code projects now and have been for several years because, again, we're doing the software company thing, and it's remarkable how much we have to remind ourselves, how much we have to refer to our own documentation and code to say, why on earth did we code this in this way? This seems so roundabout. And then we look at the comment and say, oh, I see. Yes, that absolutely makes sense. So, again, to sum this all up, comments are your exobrain. Do yourself a favor and download some of that knowledge while it's fresh in your head. Let's see. Oh, I was going to give an example of that. Oh, good. I've got the example right here. So we've got a little snippet of code here that doesn't make a ton of sense. So set tuning settings level equals 0. Well, the variables are at least well named. Set tuning type level equals select count from. Okay, it's going to take a little while to remember what on earth this is for. Oh, wait, there's a comment right there. Find out whether you're going to be working at the all or the override level. 1 equals. Oh, that's right. I remember. Fictional me says to myself, this is the thresholds table, and there's a default level setting or a database-specific levels. I remember now. So little hints like that as you go along really go a long way to getting you back up to speed anytime you have to dig in and glance at a piece of code. So how much faster can we get to know a bit of code? Let's go ahead and actually get some code on and try this. I've used the procedure minion.backupdb. It's one of the procedures with, and I feel very comfortable using this because it's a free. You can go download it. We don't even get your email or anything. It's a community tool. Minion.backupdb is one of the stored procedures as part of Minion Backup. But I have removed all of the comments from this version of it. So if we were to sit down and have to get to know this, either because we have inherited this project, or it's been, gosh, maybe a year since I've touched this code that I wrote, and now I've got to go and fix something or what have you, we would take quite a while. We would get good hints from the well-named parameters. Okay, great. A good hint for what the procedure is for from the name of it, backup DB. Well, I imagine you would back up an individual database with this. But then we start scrolling down. All right, there's a big list of variables I'm going to ignore. There's an execution date time. Gee, I wonder what that's for. And we could do this for quite a while. But let's start scrolling down. It's going to take us a very, look at those numbers climb, 700 lines, 800 lines, oh goodness, let's scroll faster, 2,000, it's going to take us a really long time to get a full grasp of what this thing is for, the extent of what it can do, the options available, why we coded these things in different ways. But now let's take a look at the normal version, the version with the comments. Well, right up top we see what's called the flower box, which is the big chunk of comment that typically goes at the top of the stored procedure. I've always liked that name, flower box. You do these little set of daisies or what have you. And we say, okay, created by, and if I were someone else, all of this information would be very useful. Who it was created by, other information I might want to know about them. Oh, here's the purpose of the procedure. Oh, the features that, oh, that's nice. Apparently it's unlimited. I don't know why we have that in there. And a walkthrough. Oh, that's quite nice. So I can just get at a glance. Oh, here's the data gathering and then pre-code. Oh, pre-code. You can do stuff before the actual back and so forth and so on, right? If we scroll down, oh, that's nice too. We'll go over more of this later. If we scroll down into the code itself, we'll see that the sections are marked off very nicely. There are individual line items to say what goes where. A lot of good stuff. It's going to be a lot easier to get to know this version of the stored procedure than it is the uncommented version. I say again, ask me how I know, but again, if we were in a room together, I would see a great many of you nodding because you've been through this before. You've suffered the heartache of opening up a stored procedure you've never seen before and seeing it utterly devoid of green text. All right, so we have made the case for comments. I almost said for stored procedures. That's a different talk. So how to comment? Yeah, I'm going to go off on this for a little bit. The flower box, of course, is absolutely fantastic. And for those who may be new to coding, actually, I'm going to pause here for a second. Are there any comments or questions so far that I should take half a breath and wait for?
We're all good to keep going at this point, Jen.
Brilliant. Okay. So in the flower box, it's fairly standard to have, say, the source. Who wrote this? And that's very nice for if you download a piece of code off of the internet. If you download something like Atom Mechanics SP Who is Active, he's got his site information, of course, right up at the top, usage and so forth. Things like create date, purpose. The modification log is a fairly popular one. I didn't originally care about modification logs, but I've sort of been won over. Here's the date, here's who did it, and here's what the changes were. But we can do more. We can do better than what is standard. We can give more information about our organization. Now, I'm speaking from someone who's making objects to put out there for the public. You may be just working in shop, but even so, other people are going to potentially have their hands on your code. Other people in your team, other people outside the team, people who come after you. So it's not a bad idea to say, this is, Bill Smith from the XYZ team that was in charge of creating this on, September 2017. Parameter definitions and values is absolutely fantastic. Valid values for statement only include want to know because it's a bit. So, but even so, it's very nice to say, okay, backup type can be log or full or what have you. Temporary table definitions and use, same thing. It's very convenient to say here's a list of the temporary tables in use and what their purpose is. Example execution statements is one of my favorites of all time. You're not only giving examples of how to run the stored procedure in common ways, but you're also making it easier on yourself whenever you do an alteration to test the code. Just go up and run that example execution statement. And then that walkthrough or table of contents, again, is my favorite thing of all time to comment. So single line comments, any query that you feel needs a comment, of course, anywhere you like, just go wild. You can, I suppose, it's possible to over-comment a stored procedure. I haven't seen it done yet. I issue a challenge. Someone go crazy and then send it to me. As far as the compiler is concerned, comments are free. As far as storage on disk is concerned, it's not entirely, but I don't think we need to be too conservative here. We love to make code blocks, and now this was definitely Sean's innovation. Any logical block of code within a stored procedure gets a begin tag and an end tag, which is absolutely fantastic, both for finding things visually. It's like a chapter header in a book, right? So it's a nice navigation tool. It identifies a logical block of code, so if you say, you know what, I need to add logging, and that should go immediately after the server label section. Gee, I wonder where that ends. Oh, I already can see where I should insert the code. It's just after here. Now, in this particular example, it's not that onerous because it's just a handful of lines long, but some of those sections, some of those major sections in that particular stored procedure we were looking at are hundreds of lines long. Simplifies moving and changing code. Again, not just adding, but if you decide that, well, this bit of code should happen earlier, it's easier to cut and paste the entire thing. One more small note. We love labeling begin and end. So we've got begin tuning settings level, and then down at the end you'll see the end tuning settings level. Now, some of you may be shaking your heads at this and saying, oh, I don't need to worry about that because the formatting tells me that those begin and end go together. While you're right, not everybody has an automatic formatting tool, and not everybody without an automatic formatting tool is conscientious enough to line up their begin and ends. So it's very nice to label your begin and ends that go together. And formatting, you're right, is implicit commentary. I say you're right, as you're actually speaking back to me in my mind now. Yes, that was an excellent point, person in the second row. You're implicitly saying, look at the if addition like enterprise, that everything under it goes with that if. And the next if is very clearly not a part of that. So yeah, formatting is implicit commentary. If you are lucky enough to have an automatic formatting tool like Redgate's SQL prompt, that's wonderful. I absolutely love that tool. If not, you can get online and search up the SQL Prettifier or any of another half dozen code formatters if you'd like that done for you. Oh, went one too far. So we talked about commenting, and you thought there was nothing more to drive into the ground, but I'm going to extend this even further and go on to help systems. And again, I will pause for not a cup of tea, a sip of tea. So what on earth does a help system have to do with comments? As far as I'm concerned, comments are documentation, right? Well, therefore, documentation can be put into a help system. Help is comments. You're putting a formalized structure around those comments that we were looking at before. Advanced commenting, I like that. So a help system of any kind should be accessible to whoever's going to use it. It shouldn't be difficult. That seems wildly obvious, but we're going to run into an example where it's not. And I should write that down because it's not normally a part of this. Accessible. There we go. It should be searchable instead of just having to scroll through, and it definitely should be updatable. So we've got a couple different options here. Are we going to, oh, no, we're going to actually go over to the demo. Let's go back to where we're supposed to be. There we go. And let's look over a couple of different help options. Help 1, help 2, help 3. Okay. In help 1, we've got the simplest kind. We've got the in SP at help. And again, I realize I'm focusing exclusively on stored procedures here. I know that's limiting, and we'll talk about more in a little bit. Right now, we'll say the in stored procedure at help. This is the simplest method of help system, where you just say, I have a help parameter. There's multiple ways to implement this, of course. What Sean calls the puke of text, which is just a large wall. You can do semi-formatted. You can do temp tables. This is an example by Jordan English, who was getting lessons from Sean and very kindly submitted this to be used for this session. She had created this procedure and then added the help. Let's go ahead and search out what she did for that. Let's not use regular expressions with the at. Fine, next. What do you mean? Oh, it's because I'm using selection. Good Lord. And also, of course, she's got her flower box up here, and she has documented the help command, which is lovely. Yes, I know I've found the only at help in that section. Let's keep going. There we go. If at help equal 1, and she does this lovely bit of code to determine whether it's morning or evening where you are in print. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I thought that was very sweet. But it is all very simple. She just prints the information as needed. Purpose overview, parameter. She's got her parameters divided into different sections, which is quite nice. And so when we run this, we get back, it's late here, so we get back a good evening, and all the information that we could possibly want. This is very nice, it's very simple, and it's very useful. If you get into the habit of it and all your stored procedures have at help, yeah, that's a very nice way to do it. We've done a little bit more here. We've created a separate help system. So it stands alone from each individual stored procedure, and it's its own little system. So the minimum you'd need is a table to hold the answers, something to insert answers to the table, that's for your use, and something to search up the answers. And we'll go ahead and here's our answer insert procedure, and then for retrieving that information, I've got a help.me. I believe I need to, there we go, I need to insert some answers so that when people search something up, they'll be able to get an answer back. So here we are. Here's my example executions. I'm going to run help.me, how to do things. How to do things. Try really hard. Oh, well, that was very helpful. If I just run help.me help, then this particular procedure will run and find anything with help in the title. Or if I read it on its own, it just gives me a list of all topics and answers. So again, this is very simple. This is very nice and easy. There's nothing wrong with this. For Minion backup, of course, we've gone to ridiculous lengths to make the system, I won't say more complicated than it needs to be, but we wanted it to be a really nice help system. So instead of showing you the entire thing, we'll just show what it can do. Again, minion.help by itself returns a list of modules, because with our system you can actually have different modules installed. If you say, okay, fine, give me the help for backup, you'll get the help topics available. Say, all right, fine, give me a particular topic, and it'll print that out quite nicely. And all of these are stored, all of this information is stored in tables. But I wanted to do more. I wanted to be able to do a fuzzy lookup, or not a fuzzy lookup, but just a lookup period. If this is the right version, there you go. Then that will make the second parameter behave as a search term instead of a general search term instead of a just give me this section heading. So you can make your system as complex, if you're going to do a separate system, as complex or as simple as you like. And I will pause one more time and see if there are questions, comments, or odd musings. All right. Everyone is enraptured. I'm happy with that.
Sorry, Jen. I was
Not
on mute. excuse me, one question.
Certainly.
So, sorry. So you mentioned about the formatting tools, and previously you mentioned Redgate. Are there
Yes.
any other formatting tools that you have used, do use, or could recommend?
There are other formatting tools, but the only ones I ever use or remember are Redgate's prompt, SQL prompt, which is a paid tool, which, like I said, I have and use, and then the online SQL Prettifier, which, you know what, let's go ahead and SQL Prettifier, and that's just an online interface where you can copy your query. And where is it? SQL format. Let's see, we're getting a whole bunch of, there we go. The Simple Talk SQL Prettifier is the one I tend to use. But you can see there are a bunch of different SQL formatters out there. But yeah, those are the ones that I habitually use. And I've had other people in the session say, oh, well, there's this tool and that tool. I never remember.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, of course. So, all right. We've looked at our help systems. So on the upside, if you decide on a help system, it's a lot more extensible. You can do a lot more with it and include a ton more information because you're not sort of, I'll say, cluttering up your stored procedure with a ton of information. More than that, if you have a separate help system, that means that you can use it to document tables. And I will actually jump back here and show you that if I get a set of help topics, that I have information and basically articles that people can look up. I've got tables documented, I've got procedures documented, and you're not normally able, you can't put comments in a table. So from that point of view, a help system is one up on just plain comments. A help system, if done right, is very user-friendly. That @help parameter is simply brilliant. And it's nice that the help systems are searchable. But on the other hand, it's a lot more information to write. That can be a con, that can be a negative. For someone like me, I want to brain dump as much information as possible. It's really not. I like having a place to put all of that so that I can reference it later. A help system will require more support than simply typing -- inside a stored procedure. And formatting the output can be troublesome, which, Jordan had no problem with that. In her simple stored procedure, I had a ton of problems with that, half a ton, with the minion help system because I wanted things done in a very particular way. So just depending on how you want to do things and how much trouble you want to go through is how much of a negative these things are. So I want to peek ahead in my outline real quick because I don't want to move on without showing you something really cool. Yeah, we're actually there. I've shown you 3 different help systems. I mentioned something earlier. I mentioned SP who is active. And if we were, again, in a room together, I would say, how many of you have heard of Atom Mechanics SP who is active? And about at least half of you would raise your hand. It's a wonderful free community tool, a stored procedure, again, made by Atom Mechanic, one of the smartest people in the industry, I dare say. And this is his procedure. He's got who is active in the version, the copyright, and all of his information right up here in the top. The purpose of the procedure itself is to get information on processes running in SQL Server, and that's kind of a diminutive description of it, but that'll do for now. It's actually quite extensive. But if I run SP who is active with @help = 1, I will get back a lovely double result set with double? No, that's a triple result set with tons of information. The same copyright and version information, set of parameter descriptions, and formatted outcome, or information about the result set. Here's the thing, though. Again, it's wonderful creating a session like this because you learn things you might not have looked into otherwise. I went digging around for Adam's help code because I thought, oh, how neat. I wonder if he put all that information into temporary tables. Okay, so there's the actual parameter right up at the beginning. Now let's search for @help. Something or @help is no, we're not going to worry about that. Oh, here we are. If @help = 1. So I began scrolling through here to kind of get a glimpse of, well, wait a minute, there's no huge chunks of text in here describing all of the parameters, and you know what this looks like. Let's go back up to where that was. Replace, convert. This is a bunch of string manipulation. After a great deal of fiddling around, I finally realized what Adam had done is the most elegant yet fiddly thing I've ever seen. He's actually grabbing the execution text from the current SPID, which of course if you're running SP_whoisActive will be the code of SP_whoisActive, and looking for these markers and then taking the actual parameters and the actual comments above them and presenting those as his help system. I was deeply impressed at this level of nerdery, and I just wanted to share that with you as well. You're welcome to go grab SP_whoisActive and marvel at this and also use it for its intended purpose, whatever. But the point is that you can get as fiddly as you like with this or not. All right, so we've talked about comments. We've talked about help systems, which again, it totally counts because it's extended commenting. Now let's talk about alternative commenting. Some brave souls attend the session and at some point before here wave their arms around and say, so what do you think of extended properties? And for them in particular, I made this slide. I'll take a moment and let you read it. All right, so I'm not a big fan. And I'm not necessarily going to judge you. No, I'll take out the necessary. I'm not going to judge you if you're a big fan of extended properties and you use it everywhere, because they do have their benefits. Let's go ahead and get back into some code for this. There we go. Extended properties 1 and 2. Yeah, I'm going to close down a few windows just to make things easier and faster. Please hold. There we are. There we go. So extended properties, it shouldn't be that much of a pain because after all, we have a template explorer where we can just go and then find the extended properties and right click and get something like this. But let me just show you around, okay? To add an extended property, which is basically a piece of documentation attached to something, I'm going to add it to the database itself. It's just add extended property and then @name equal and value equal. So let's go ahead and do this. There we are. We can modify an existing one using SP_update extended property. That's not too bad. Name equals, value equals. All right, that's fine. And of course, this is built in and it comes with SQL Server. Now let's see, like with our help system before, we were able to list all of the topics available. We'll do the same thing here. We'll select name and value from fn_list extended property, and we must pass in default, where name equal help.me. Okay, you may already be getting an inkling of why this is aggravating to me. For Minion, if I want help, oops, let's try that again. I type that. If I want a list of topics for a particular module, I type that. I am a no, not a lazy. I am an efficient coder, and I do not want to do this. I don't even want to templatize that every time I want to look something up in my system. I just don't like it. Some people do, and I will give them this much, that with extended properties, you are able to do more. There are documentation tools that are based off of the extended properties in a database, and they'll format things very nicely. And you can get at things programmatically like this, and you don't have to code it yourself. But, no. You'd think this is not so bad. But if I want to document, say, a specific table, it gets a lot worse. I have to add extended property, give it a name and a value, and then go through all these levels. Level type equals schema level, name equals minion, one type equals table, one name is object. This makes me absolutely crazy, even to demonstrate you with a prepared script. It just makes me nuts. If it doesn't make you nuts and it looks delightful, have at it. But that is the reason why I have this particular slide. So extended properties are an option available to you. All right, so SIS packages. SIS packages, you would think, well, you know, how on earth am I going to document them? Because if you have a separate help system, you absolutely can include information on that there. I would also encourage you to document your SIS packages the way you document your stored procedures, to comment on them in the same way. And the way you do that is to use annotations. Now, Sean filmed an entire video on this and posted it on Midnight DBA. You'll find it under the dev section under SIS, and it's called Commenting Tribal Knowledge in SIS Packages. But a few of the highlights say you go ahead and include a flower box just as you would do with a stored procedure. You can right-click in your package and say Add Annotation, and you can even format it. See that we've got this nice big text up here that says Security Test, created by, the date, the email, the office number, if you really want to give out your number in a package. By the way, well, you guys watch movies, you know 555 is a valid exchange. Anyway, and you can add a purpose, and you can say where it's called by, and the walkthrough or table of contents, and you know everything we do for the others. As far as the equivalent of individual, we'll get to the individual line comments in a little, but you can mark. Look at the left graphics. You can mark the start and end of a flow, of a process, with little start and end markers. You can name your loops and your objects well. You don't want a sequence container named sequence container. Name it after its purpose. Name it for what it's going to do, so that when you open up that package again, you don't go, gee, I wonder what that was for. And as far as those, what would be individual line comments inside your stored procedures, again, little annotations inside the objects that need them. Here you have to make sure that the file exists before you this. There are only 3, and so forth and so on. Very, very useful stuff. You can do the same thing with paths as well. SSRS is a lot trickier. Quite frankly, I have not found a satisfactory documentation means for SRS. These are hacks. Quite frankly, you can, let's see if I have a graphic for this. Yes, so each SSRS report is in fact an XML file, and you can right-click on your report, and I believe it's, oh gosh, it's been a long time, view XML or view code or something along those lines, and you can actually see the XML code. You can, if you wish, down at the end of it, use the HTML or the XML style comment less than bang dash dash. But it has to be at the end of the report. It has to be after that / report marker. This, again, isn't really ideal. This is extremely hidden. People aren't going to see it. It doesn't have the advantages of most of the code, most of the comments we've been doing before, but it's something. So, okay, I guess that's something. You can, however, comment expressions, and that can be just a little bit of usefulness. Just use the VB comment marker, the tick mark. And I would limit those comments to the expression at hand, right? So that can be a little bit helpful. And, oh, I don't have a third slide for it, so let me back up for a moment. No, back is going the other way. There we go. Someone suggested in a session that you can, in your report, add a text box and then add white text to it so it doesn't show up in the report. Yes, you can, but if your reports are meant for printing, it's entirely possible you're going to mess up the formatting. B, if you put something sensitive in there, I mean, these are reports and people can see them, and eventually somebody's going to highlight. I sit there and highlight text as a matter of habit, and it'll show up. So again, I'm not condemning it, but we don't have an ideal commenting situation for reports. What are you going to do? All right, we already talked about these things. So we have come to the end. We have talked about comments as documentation. We've talked about the limits of traditional documentation and how wonderful and fantastic, you know, dash and / comments are, and how smart it makes you in getting to know your code very quickly. At this point, I will go ahead and leave up these summary slides, and if there are any comments or questions, then I will hang out with you guys. But thank you very much for having me and for showing up today.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, so we do have a couple of questions. So do you have any recommendations on using the table/field description feature for documentation and how to extract the details for the entire schema?
The table/field feature and how to extract. Can you tell if they're speaking about the extended properties, or if they're speaking of the separate help system that I was talking about before?
Unfortunately, from the question, I'm not able to. If the person who extended properties.
Okay. The short answer is no. I don't use them and I don't like them. I believe that, like I said, I believe that documentation tools like, again, Redgate, SQL Doc will probably, make use of extended properties, but a quick Google will help you there. And if you are on the Twitters and can't find anything Googleable to help you with that, then hop on Twitter and ask the folks, perhaps on the SQL Help hashtag, for help with extended properties. But unfortunately, I can't answer a lot of questions with extended properties because I despise them so. It's like asking me sewing questions. I really can't stand to sew.
Does that answer your question? While we wait to see if there is an answer, we have got a comment around feeling very guilty for all of the times I have not done this.
The first step, my poor guilty friend, is to recognize that we have a problem, and then to feel happy that we are progressing in our lives. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you not to feel guilty, but go forth, sin no more.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Jen for coming along and presenting for us today. I'd like to thank all of you who have attended today. Just to let you know, next month we are on at the same time, second Tuesday of the month, and the particular session that we have for next month, bear with me, is that we have strategies to get the maximum concurrency from your workload in SQL Server. Now, we do have for this particular session, we've got, whoops, my screen is not playing well. We've got Sunil Agarwal from Microsoft talking to us, so if you haven't already registered, make sure that you register for this event. And I look forward to seeing you all online this time next month. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks very much for coming, everyone.
Well, I certainly think